Do you remember the ritual? Every Thanksgiving, after the pie, after Uncle David had his second whiskey, someone would always raise a glass to those who aren't with us. And then the silence, the heavy, loaded silence. And then someone, usually your Aunt Carol, would sniff and say, "Well, we know he's not looking down on us, thank God." And you'd all nod. A little shiver of collective righteousness, the unspoken name hanging over the table like a bad smell. Him, my father, your grandfather, the family monster. Paz, a wet, ragged breath, the sound of oxygen tubing shifting. You grew up on the stories. I made sure of it. The time he forgot to pick me up from senior prom, leaving me stranded in the rain in a satin dress. The Christmas he threw my handmade gift, a clay ashtray, into the fireplace because it was useless. His cold, silent disapproval that could freeze a room in July. The way he never held you as babies, never smiled at your school plays. The cruel, distant tyrant in a worn leather armchair. You called him the warden behind his back. You said his heart must have been a lump of coal. When he died, the relief in this family was so thick you could taste it. It was a celebration of absence. We were free. You've carried that hate for him like a family heirloom, polishing it, passing it down. My greatest success and my eternal damnation. Because I built that monster, brick by bitter brick. I crafted him with my lies, my omissions, my desperate, cowardly need to survive, and I fed him to you, my children, to keep you safe from the real beast. And the real beast? A cough, a struggle for air. This oxygen isn't enough. This morphine isn't enough. The only thing that is enough is the truth. So you have to listen. You have to hear about the girl I was, long before I was your mother, the girl who died so that I could live. It was 1978. I was 19, not the sensible, knitted cardigan mother you know. I was a lit fuse, hair a wild, sun-bleached mess, skinny from cigarettes and cheap coffee. I was all sharp edges and hungry eyes, running from a quiet, suffocating life in this very town. My father, the man you think you know, was a watchmaker. His world was tiny gears, immense patience, absolute order. My mother was a ghost of gardenias and sadness, already fading. Their world was so small, so quiet. I wanted noise. I wanted chaos. I wanted to burn. And I found the match. Shift in tone. The voice becomes younger, more reckless, layered over with present-day regret. His name was Leo. Of course it was. He rolled into town on a motorcycle that sounded like a sustained scream. He had a smile that promised trouble and eyes that held none of the consequences. He was older. He lived. He talked about San Francisco, about freedom, about throwing off the shackles of bourgeois morality. To a girl whose biggest rebellion had been skipping church to smoke by the creek, he was a prophet. My father saw it instantly. He called Leo parasitic, dangerous. He forbade me from seeing him, which to a 19-year-old lit fuse was the same as an engraved invitation. So I lied. I snuck out. I stole money from my father's workshop till, just small amounts, for diners and gas. I told myself I was borrowing it, that I was entitled to a little life. I became a ghost in my own home, slipping in at dawn, reeking of smoke and recklessness. The arguments with my father were volcanic. I called him a prison guard, a fossil, a heartless, joyless man who wanted to bury me alive in his little tick-tock world. I told him I hated him, and he just took it. His face, usually so stern, would go still, not angry, wounded. But all I saw was judgment. All I felt was the thrilling pressure of rebellion. Leo's scene was in the next town over, in a rented farmhouse that was a perpetual, grimy party. It was a carnival of lost souls. There was always music too loud, smoke too thick, and a chemical smell in the air that wasn't just cigarettes. I thought it was enlightenment. I thought I was finally living. One night, Leo had a business proposition. A quick drive to the city, a simple exchange, easy money, enough to get us both out to the coast for good. I was terrified. I was exhilarated. This was it, the ultimate leap. My father must have sensed it. The night of the drive, he was waiting for me in the kitchen. It was 2 a.m. He was in his robe, sitting in the dark. "Don't go," he said. His voice wasn't a command. It was a plea. "This path, it has no guardrails, Sarah. You will fall." I laughed in his face, a cruel, hard sound. "My name isn't Sarah anymore," I hissed. "It's Star, and I'd rather fall forever than stand still here with you." I ran out into the night. Leo was idling at the curb. I climbed on the back of his bike, wrapped my arms around his waist, and didn't look back. The drive is a blur of adrenaline and night wind. The meeting point was a deserted waterfront warehouse. It went wrong instantly. It wasn't a business deal. It was an ambush. Leo had stolen from the wrong people. Shouting, a flash of a knife, Leo shoving me behind him, then shouting, "Run!" I ran. I stumbled through alleys, my heart a jackhammer in my throat. I heard the squeal of tires, a shout, a sickening, heavy thud. And then, silence. I hid for hours, curled behind a stinking dumpster. When the sky began to lighten to a dirty gray, I crept out. I walked, numb, towards the main road. And there I saw it. Leo's bike, a twisted wreck of metal against a telephone pole. And beside it, in the gutter, a sheet covered with a sheet, police lights painting everything in silent, swirling blue and red. My brain shattered. Leo was gone, and I was next. The men he crossed would find me. The police would arrest me. My life was over before it began. In my panic, I did the only thing I could think of. I called home. I stood in a sticky phone booth, trembling so hard I could barely dial. My mother answered. I just sobbed. "There's been an accident. I'm in trouble, so much trouble." An hour later, my father's old sedan pulled up. He got out. He looked ancient in the dawn light. He didn't ask questions. He just opened the passenger door. I crawled in, reeking of fear and guilt. We drove in silence for 20 minutes. Then, in a voice flat as stone, he said, "Tell me everything." And I did. I spilled the whole sordid story. The thefts, the drugs, the deal, the men, Leo's death. I was a hysterical, confessing mess. He listened. Not a word. Not a sigh. When I finished, there was a silence so complete I thought the world had ended. Then he pulled the car over. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw not anger, not disappointment, but a terrible, crushing calculation. "You will go home," he said, each word a chisel strike. "You will tell your mother you were at a friend's studying and lost track of time. You will never speak of Leo, of that place, of any of this ever again. You will bury that girl. You will become someone else." "But the police, the men," I stammered. "I will handle it," he said, and the way he said it, it froze my blood. "But there is a price, Sarah. You will live a quiet life, a good life. You will never run again. You will be the daughter and one day the mother that this family needs. And you will let them hate me. I didn't understand. What? To keep this buried, he said, his eyes holding mine with a force that felt physical. You need a wall, a permanent, immovable wall between that past and your future. I will be that wall. Your shame will become my cruelty. Your rebellion will become my tyranny. They will blame me for your pain, for your caution, for your fears, and they will never, ever look behind me to see you. He was offering to become the villain, to wear my sin like a coat so I could walk clean, to become the monster under the bed so the real monster could tuck you in at night. And God help me, I said yes. End part 1. Sound design. The monitor beep holds a steady, somber rhythm. The narrator's breath is shallow. I said yes. And with that single whispered word, I killed my father and replaced him with a story. The story you've hated your whole lives. And now I have to tell you what he was really handling that day. Voice. The weakness returns, but is now fueled by a grim, relentless momentum. He handled it. For weeks, I was a ghost in my own body. I followed his instructions perfectly. I was the dutiful, shaken daughter. I quit my waitressing job. I stopped going out. I enrolled in a secretarial course at the community college. I was the picture of repentant normality. My mother fussed over me, believing my father's sudden intense strictness was a reaction to my staying out all night. But the air in our house had changed. It was no longer tense with my rebellion. It was thick with a secret, one that hummed between my father and me like a live wire. We barely spoke. When we did, it was curt, functional. The performance had begun. And then the police came. 2 officers at the door on a Tuesday afternoon. They wanted to talk about Leo, about his associates. They had traced a call made from his apartment to our number the week before he died. My mother turned pale. I felt the floor drop away. But my father, he stepped forward. He invited them in. He was calm, so terribly calm. Officers, he said, his voice the same one he used to explain a broken watch. I'm afraid that call was from me. I had been trying to locate my daughter, Sarah. I had reason to believe she was consorting with that young man. I called to demand he stay away from her. We had words. One of the officers, a man with kind eyes, looked at me. Is that true, miss? Were you involved with Leo Driscoll? I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My father's gaze pinned me to my chair. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder of the bargain. Let them hate me. She was infatuated, my father answered for me, his tone dripping with dismissive contempt. A foolish girl's crush. I put a stop to it. As you can see, she is home now. She has learned her lesson about keeping unsuitable company. He made it sound so small, so trivial. He made me sound trivial. The officer with the kind eye seemed skeptical. Mr. Driscoll's activities were serious. There are rumors of a deal gone bad that night. You didn't see anything? Hear anything? I am a watchmaker, officer, my father said, spreading his hands. I work with tiny, precise things. The world of drugs and violence is as foreign to me as the moon. My only concern was my daughter's reputation, which I trust will remain out of this sordid business. He was constructing a narrative right in front of them, the overbearing, puritanical father cleaning up his silly daughter's mess. It was so believable. It was so ordinary. More ordinary than the truth of a wild girl and a dead man. The police left unsatisfied, but without cause. The case grew cold, filed away as another dead end in a drug-related death. But that was just the official story. The real handling was darker. Leo's associates came looking too, not the police. 2 men in a car that sat at the end of our street for 3 days. My father saw them. He didn't call the police. Instead, he did something that chills me to this day. He walked out there alone. I watched from my bedroom window, my heart in my throat. I saw him approach the car. I saw the window roll down. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw my father's posture. It wasn't a threat. It was a resolved commitment. He spoke for a few minutes. He didn't gesture, didn't raise his voice. Then he reached into his coat pocket. He didn't pull out a wallet. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to the man in the car. The man looked at it, then back at my father. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the man nodded. The window rolled up, and they drove away. They never came back. I ran downstairs as he came back inside. "What did you give them? Money?" He looked at me, his face a mask of exhaustion. "No, the deed to the workshop." I gasped. His business, his life's work, the building his own father had left him. Why? What was on the paper? "A promise," he said, his voice hollow. "A promise that the debt died with Leo Driscoll, that the only thing of value he left behind was information in my head about his habits, his other contacts, information they wanted more than revenge on a scared girl. The workshop was collateral for my silence and yours." He had bargained with wolves, and he had won at the cost of everything he'd built. He sold the workshop a month later to pay off the remainder of what he called the balance. We never spoke of it again. He took a job as a night janitor at the school, the proud watchmaker cleaning gum off desks. That was the first brick in the wall. The story became, his business failed. He became bitter. And so the performance of our lives began in earnest. To sell the lie, he had to become the lie. The cruelty started. He'd criticize my clothes. Too bright, too much. "You want to attract the wrong kind of attention again?" he'd mutter, just loud enough for my mother to hear. He'd forget to pick me up from places, forcing me to walk or call a friend, reinforcing the narrative of his neglect. When I started dating your father, a good, kind man, my father was cold and suspicious towards him for years. He was building his villain's resume. Every harsh word, every cold shoulder, every family gathering he ruined with his silence, it was a calculated act, a flare sent up to draw all the eyes, all the blame onto him. He was creating a gravitational field of dislike, so strong that no one would ever think to look at me and wonder what I was hiding. When you children were born, that's when the performance became an epic. He refused to hold you as infants. "I'll drop them," he'd grumble. He never remembered your birthdays. He'd leave the room when you brought home crayon drawings. He was the ogre in the fairy tale, and I was the sympathetic princess, rolling my eyes for your benefit, saying, "Oh, don't mind your grandfather, he's just like that." I was the co-author of the myth. I fed you the stories. "Did I ever tell you about the time Grandpa?" I would begin, and I'd spin a tale of his coldness, editing out any context, any hint of my own provocation. I made you afraid of him. I made you pity me. I turned my savior into your villain. And he let me. My God, he let me. The worst part, the most monstrous part of my soul, is that I began to believe it. To make the lie livable, I let a sliver of real resentment grow. I blamed him for the stifling life I had to lead. I blamed him for my constant low-grade fear. I blamed him for the death of Star, the girl who wanted to burn. I conflated the prison of my own secret, with the prison he was pretending to be. Some days, I think I hated him for real. It was easier than hating myself. He died with your hatred as his shroud. At his funeral, you were all so quiet, respectful, but dry-eyed. Relief hung in the air like humidity. I stood at that podium, looked at his casket, and looked at all your faces, faces that despised the man in the box, and I gave the eulogy of a dutiful, long-suffering daughter. I praised his work ethic. I made vague references to his difficulties. I solidified his legacy as a hard man. I was the final nail in his coffin, not just of his body, but of his name. And for 20 more years, I tended the lie. I kept the wall strong, until this, an implied gesture to the hospital room, until my body began to fail and the weight of the lie. It became heavier than the disease. It became a stone on my chest, stopping my breath faster than the fluid in my lungs. I realized I was about to let him be damned for eternity. I was about to die, and you would pass that hatred to your children. You would point to a photo and say, "That was your great-grandfather. He was a cruel man." And the truth of his sacrifice would be erased forever. He took my shame, my crime, and my punishment. He wore my monster's face so I could wear a mother's smile. He lived in the hell of your disdain so I could live in the heaven of your love. And now, you need to know what the original sin was, the tragedy he took the blame for, because Leo's death wasn't an accident. The waterfront, the ambush, me running. I told you I heard a thud. That was true. I told you I hid. That was true. But I left something out. When I ran from that warehouse, I wasn't just running from the men. Leo had shoved a small, heavy canvas bag into my hands. "Take it, run," he'd yelled. In my panic, I clutched it and fled. It was the drugs, the payment, the reason for the whole deal. I ran for blocks, the bag feeling like a live bomb. I couldn't think. I just knew I had to get rid of it. I saw a narrow alley, a storm drain. I ran to it, lifted the heavy grate just enough, and shoved the bag in. I heard a splash as it hit the water below. I let the grate fall back with a clang. Then I heard the squeal of tires. I peeked out. I saw Leo's bike swerve onto the main road, the car full of men right behind him. They were chasing him. He was trying to lead them away from me. He was looking over his shoulder at the car gaining on him. He didn't see the telephone pole. The impact was a sound I feel in my bones every day of my life. It wasn't just metal. It was the end of a world. I didn't cause the accident with my hands, but I caused it. My involvement, my naivete, my theft of my father's money that funded Leo's initial, smaller deal, my presence there that night. If I had never taken that money, if I had never met Leo, if I had never gone, he might still be alive. The bag of drugs in the drain was my responsibility. His death was on my soul. When my father came to get me, I told him about the men, the chase, the accident, but I lied about the bag. I was too terrified. I said Leo had it with him. I let my father believe the debt died with Leo and the lost merchandise. He didn't know about the drugs in the drain. His terrible bargain with those men, it was based on my incomplete confession. He thought he was protecting me from my bad choices and a dangerous boyfriend. He didn't know he was also protecting me from being an accessory to a major drug transaction and from the moral weight of knowing I'd triggered the chase that led to a man's death. His sacrifice was for a sin even bigger than he knew. For decades, I told myself I spared him that final, ugly detail. But I was sparing myself. I let him sacrifice his name, his livelihood, his relationship with his future family for a lie wrapped in a bigger lie. I let him be the monster so I could hide the coward. When the lawyer read his will, it was a single page. He left everything to my mother, and upon her passing, to me. There was one line, separate from the legal language. It said, "For Sarah, to keep the walls standing." I framed it as more of his cryptic, controlling nonsense. Now I know it was his final instruction, his final acceptance of his role. The warden guarding the prisoner, who was actually guarding the prison, which contained my truth. So here we are, at the end of my life and the beginning of your understanding. I am not the victim of the story you were told. I am the catalyst. I am the vandal who shattered our family's peace, and my father was the silent, steadfast custodian who spent the rest of his life carefully gathering the shards, gluing them into a new shape, a shape that hid the broken edges from view. He made sure you saw a solid, if ugly, vase. He never let you see the cracks were all my making. This is not an apology to him. It's too late for that, and an apology is a pebble against the mountain of what he did. This is a correction of the record. This is me finally stepping out from behind his shadow. Your grandfather, Arthur Bell, was not a cruel man. He was a devastatingly loving one. He loved me so much he was willing to be hated by everyone, including me, to save me. He loved you, his grandchildren, so much he was willing to have you despise his memory so that your mother, the real source of the poison, could be a source of only love and safety for you. He saw the wildfire I was, and he built a firebreak with his own reputation. I was the villain, the weak, selfish, reckless girl who would have burned down every life around her for a thrill, the woman who was too much of a coward to carry her own guilt, so she let an innocent man carry it for her, the mother who fed her children a lie to keep them close. All the caution you thought was his repression, that was my fear. All the rules you thought were his tyranny, that was my prison, built from the consequences of my actions. The quiet, careful life you thought he forced on me, that was the life he saved for me, the life that produced you. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I am asking you to transfer your hatred, take it off his grave, let it go, or point it at me where it has always belonged. Set him free. Let the story of Arthur Bell be one of a quiet watchmaker who, when the gears of fate broke, used his own hands to stop them, knowing it would grind him to dust. You will have to decide what to do with this. You can rage at me. You can question your entire childhood. You will. But please, do this one thing for me, not as your mother, but as the keeper of the debt. Go to his grave, the plain gray stone you never visit. Take the flowers from here when I'm gone, put them there, and say just once, "Thank you. I see you now." Because he saw everything. He saw the worst of me, and he loved me anyway. Not in a warm, fuzzy way, in the hardest way possible, the way that cost you everything. My time is almost up. The weight is lifting, not the weight of the disease, the weight of the secret. I can finally breathe. This is my last lesson to you, my children. We all have monsters inside us, the wild ones, the greedy ones, the cowardly ones. The greatest act of love is not to pretend they don't exist. It is sometimes to stand in front of someone else's monster and let the world think it's yours, to give them time to chain theirs up. That's what he did for me. And the greatest tragedy is not being the monster. It is letting someone else pay for it forever. Don't make my mistake. Carry your own bags. Name your own demons. And if you ever have to choose between being loved and being truthful, choose truth, even if it means being hated. Because a life built on a lie, no matter how comfortable, no matter how loving it seems, is a house on a grave. And eventually, the ground gives way. I'm so sorry for everything, but mostly for making you hate the best man I ever knew. Now you know. The villain has left the story, and the hero can finally rest.